Every morning, somewhere between 6 and 8 a.m., while you are still rubbing sleep from your eyes, your body is already trying to kill you. That is not a metaphor. Between 3 and 8 a.m., your adrenal glands flood your bloodstream with cortisol and growth hormone in a primal surge scientists call the dawn phenomenon. These hormones scream at your liver to dump glucose into your blood, and they simultaneously dial down your sensitivity to insulin, the only hormone that can clear that glucose away. By the time you sit down to eat, your blood sugar is already elevated and your cells are already partially deaf to insulin. Now picture what happens next. You pour a bowl of cereal, or you drop 2 slices of bread into the toaster, or you peel back the foil on a cup of flavoured yogurt, or you pour yourself a tall glass of orange juice because the carton says it is full of vitamins. You have just poured gasoline on a fire your own biology lit hours before you woke up. Researchers at Stanford University strapped continuous glucose monitors onto 57 people, most of whom had been told by their doctors that they were perfectly healthy, and then fed them a simple bowl of cornflakes with milk. 80% of them spiked to pre-diabetic or diabetic blood sugar levels. 80% from cornflakes. The lead researcher, a Stanford genetics professor named Michael Snyder, looked at the data and said, lots of folks running around with their glucose levels spiking and they do not even know it. If that is what cereal does to a healthy person, imagine what it is doing to someone whose insulin system is already broken. If you have type 2 diabetes or prediabetes and you eat any version of the standard breakfast, this video is about to show you exactly how much damage it is causing and precisely what to eat instead. Stick with me through every minute, because what you learn here has the power to change the rest of your life forever. Let me walk you through the 5 most common breakfast items that millions of diabetics eat every single day, explain the science behind why each one is wrecking their blood sugar, and then hand you a replacement breakfast protocol backed by clinical trials that does the opposite. The first offender is the one sitting in almost every pantry in the country: breakfast cereal. It does not matter whether the box says whole grain, heart healthy, high fiber, or fortified with 12 vitamins. The moment those flakes or puffs hit your stomach, they dissolve into glucose at a speed your pancreas cannot match. The Stanford Continuous Glucose Monitor study, published in PLOS Biology in 2018, was the first to show in real time what happens inside the human body after a standard bowl of cereal. The researchers classified participants into 3 glucotypes based on how severely their blood sugar spiked: low, moderate, and severe. A stunning number of people who had no idea they had a problem landed in the severe category after eating cereal. The spike typically rockets blood sugar from a resting level of around 100 milligrams per deciliter up past 180 or even 200 within 60 to 90 minutes, and then it crashes, dragging energy and focus down with it. For someone with type 2 diabetes, whose beta cells are already struggling to produce enough insulin, that spike lingers longer and climbs higher, hammering the blood vessel walls with oxidative stress every single morning. And here is the detail that makes it worse. Most popular cereals contain between 10 and 17 grams of added sugar per serving, and almost no one eats the serving size printed on the box. A realistic bowl is often double, which means you are starting the day with the sugar equivalent of a dessert at the exact hour your body is least equipped to handle it. The second item is toast, and this is where millions of well-meaning diabetics are being quietly deceived. Doctors and dietitians have been telling patients for decades to swap white bread for whole wheat, and on paper that sounds logical. But a meta-analysis of 13 clinical studies published in the journal Nutrients found that the average glycemic index of bread made from whole wheat flour and the average glycemic index of bread made from white flour were virtually identical, 71 plus or minus 2. That is not a typo. Whole wheat toast and white toast hit your bloodstream at almost the same speed because commercial milling pulverizes the grain so thoroughly that the intact structure, which is what slows digestion, is completely destroyed. The fiber is technically still there, but it has been ground so fine it no longer forms a physical barrier in your gut. So every morning, when you spread margarine or jam on your whole wheat toast and believe you are making the responsible choice, your blood sugar is responding almost exactly the way it would to a slice of white bread. And if you are using margarine, a 2025 study published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition found that consuming more than 7 grams of margarine per day was associated with a 41% increased risk of type 2 diabetes and a 29% increased risk of cardiovascular disease compared to those eating less than 2 grams. That single slice of toast with margarine is a double hit, a blood sugar spike from the bread and a long-term metabolic insult from the spread. The third item is the glass of orange juice that has somehow earned a permanent seat at the breakfast table. An 8-ounce glass of orange juice contains roughly 22 grams of sugar. That is nearly 6 teaspoons. An 8-ounce serving of Dr. Pepper contains 27 grams. The difference is 5 grams, barely more than a single sugar cube, yet one is considered a health food and the other a junk drink. The reason whole oranges do not cause the same damage is that the fiber matrix of the intact fruit slows the absorption of fructose and glucose dramatically. When you squeeze a fruit into juice, you extract the sugar and leave the medicine behind. A study published in the Journal of Nutrition showed that when researchers added fiber-rich orange pomace back into orange juice, the glucose and insulin spikes were significantly blunted. The fiber was the shield, and juice removes it entirely. For someone with diabetes, drinking juice at breakfast is biochemically almost identical to drinking a small glass of flat soda on an empty stomach at the worst hormonal hour of the day. The fourth item hides behind one of the most powerful disguises in the entire grocery store: flavored yogurt. The container is small. The label often says things like natural, probiotic, protein-rich, or good source of calcium. But a 6-ounce cup of vanilla yogurt typically contains around 20 grams of sugar, of which 18 grams are added sugars according to labeling data reported by WTTW Chicago and the new FDA nutrition labels. Some 8-ounce flavored yogurts climb as high as 33 grams of sugar, which is more than 2 scoops of chocolate ice cream. Meanwhile, a cup of plain Greek yogurt contains about 6 grams of naturally occurring lactose and 0 added sugar. The difference between 6 grams and 33 grams is the difference between a food that stabilizes your blood sugar and a food that wrecks it before 9 in the morning, and because yogurt feels light and virtuous, people who eat it rarely suspect it is part of the problem. The fifth item is the one most people would never connect to diabetes at all: bacon, sausage, ham, and deli meat. Processed breakfast meats. A Harvard School of Public Health study tracking over 216,000 people for up to 36 years, published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition in 2023, found that each additional daily serving of processed red meat was associated with a 46% greater risk of developing type 2 diabetes. Not 10%, not 20. 46. A separate global analysis published in The Lancet Diabetes and Endocrinology in 2024 confirmed the finding across multiple countries and ethnicities. The mechanisms involve advanced glycation end products formed during high heat processing, nitrosamines from preservatives, and specific lipid compounds that disrupt fasting glucose and insulin signaling. Eating 2 strips of bacon every morning is not just a cardiovascular problem. It is actively feeding the disease. Now you know what is causing the damage. Here is what to eat instead, and this is not guesswork. A clinical trial at the University of Missouri took 12 people with type 2 diabetes and compared a high-protein breakfast containing 35% protein against a high-carbohydrate breakfast containing 65% carbohydrate. Both meals had the same total calories. The protein breakfast produced a 16% lower blood sugar spike and a 9.5% lower insulin demand. But the truly remarkable finding was what happened 4 hours later at lunch. The protein breakfast had primed the beta cells and the gut hormone GIP so effectively that the insulin response at the second meal was significantly enhanced, keeping glucose controlled well into the afternoon. Scientists call this the second meal phenomenon, and it means that the right breakfast does not just fix your morning, it protects your entire day. Here is the protocol. Build your breakfast around 3 pillars: protein, healthy fat, and low glycemic fiber, and keep total carbohydrates under 25 grams for the meal. Start with 2 or 3 eggs prepared any way you like. Eggs have been shown in a clinical trial to have no detrimental effect on lipoprotein or glucose metabolism in type 2 diabetes, and they deliver roughly 13 grams of protein with virtually zero blood sugar impact. Pair them with half an avocado, which adds fiber and monounsaturated fat that slows gastric emptying and flattens whatever small glucose response the meal produces. If you want something that feels more like a traditional breakfast, use steel-cut oats instead of instant. Steel-cut oats have a glycemic index of 42 to 50, while instant oatmeal scores 79, nearly double. Cook a small portion of steel-cut oats and stir in a tablespoon of almond butter and a handful of blueberries. The fat and protein from the almond butter slow digestion, and the anthocyanins in blueberries have been shown in a placebo-controlled trial at the Pennington Biomedical Research Center to improve insulin sensitivity by 22% over 6 weeks. If you eat yogurt, switch permanently to plain Greek yogurt and add your own berries and a sprinkle of cinnamon. A randomized trial published in the Journal of the American Board of Family Medicine showed that half a teaspoon of cinnamon daily lowered HbA1c by 0.83 percentage points in 90 days. That tiny addition to your morning yogurt is clinically meaningful. If you want a beverage, replace the orange juice with a tall glass of water containing 1 to 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar. A 2025 meta-analysis in Frontiers in Nutrition, pooling 7 trials and 463 diabetic patients, found that apple cider vinegar lowered fasting blood sugar by nearly 22 milligrams per deciliter and reduced HbA1c by 1.53 percentage points, with a clear dose-response curve starting at just 10 milliliters a day. Drink it through a straw to protect your enamel. One final piece that ties everything together. If you can, take a 10-minute walk after breakfast. Continuous glucose monitor data consistently shows that a short post-meal walk reduces blood sugar peaks by 30 to 50%. Your muscles act like sponges, pulling glucose out of the blood without requiring any insulin at all. It is the simplest, most effective blood sugar tool on the planet, and it costs nothing. The breakfast you have been eating was designed by food marketing, not by biology. It was engineered to taste comforting and look wholesome while quietly driving the very disease it claims to support. Your body has been fighting against that meal every morning while your hormones were already stacked against you. Now you know. The cereal, the toast, the juice, the flavoured yogurt, the processed meat, they are not breakfast. They are a daily assault on a system that is begging for mercy. Replace them with protein, healthy fat, low glycemic fibre, and a short walk, and your mornings will never look the same again. Neither will your blood sugar.